The quest for a long-term deal to bring peace to Darfur is on again. In Doha, government and rebel groups are meeting. Now, Sudan is due to hold elections on April the 11th, the first multi-party elections in a quarter of a century. It's also seen as a key milestone in the implementation of the 2005 North-South peace agreements. Well, the Darfur conflict has claimed about 300,000 lives and displaced 2.7 million people since it erupted in 2003. Well, joining us now in studio is the U.S. Special Envoy to Sudan, Scott Gration. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon,
for
everyone.
Joining us. Sir, you've said, and I quote you, we've had agreements in the past, most have failed. I think this is different. How is this different?
Well, I think it's different because I see more participation at the presidential level. We see President Deby, we see President Bashir. We've seen other people, as you noticed, when they came here to Doha to sign the agreement. We've seen participation from the African Union, from the United Nations, from the OIC. So I see that there's more people that are interested in seeing success. I also see on the rebel side more participation and more interest. As you know, GEM is here in Doha working on this, as are other rebel groups, and we're in the process of seeing if we can get very soon an agreement on ceasefire and on power sharing that can be executed for the people in Darfur.
You mentioned GEM is here. GEM still has some sticking points. They had a request for the government to postpone April's elections. They had earlier warned that they may pull out of this agreement if the government pursues a parallel agreement with that new umbrella group, which doesn't include Abdul Wahid Noor, the SLM leader. There's also been reports of clashes between the government and SLM as recently as the past week. So with all of that in mind, it makes it difficult to believe that peace is imminent.
Well, you've raised a lot of interesting issues, and all of that is true. And that's exactly why we have negotiations, to work through those issues, to come up with accommodations, to come up with agreements, to come up with compromise, so that we can move forward. On the election issue, it's my view that elections should take place. But at the same time, there has to be some power-sharing agreements that will give the rebels who were not allowed to participate in elections because of the Sudanese law that says you cannot participate if you have an armed faction. So we have to accommodate this. We have to come up with ways that there can be representation of the Darfuri people, even though they weren't able to be counted, and the constituencies did not include sometimes a full accounting of the IDPs and the Darfuri people. And in addition to that, the rebels weren't able to run. And so those are some of the things that we have to work through. Maybe an interim election in a couple of years is a solution. These are the things that have to be negotiated. These are the things that will have to get into the protocols and into the framework agreement.
Just broadening this out and looking back for a moment, since 2003, words have been weapons in this conflict as well. The US has called this genocide. The UN has never called it genocide. Does the US still call it genocide?
They do. What happens is that we tend to get sort of locked in definitions and words and that kind of thing. But the reality is that we have 2.7 million people, as you mentioned, that live in bad conditions, dire conditions, sometimes without the human rights that everybody needs to have. So the real issue is not what you call it. The real issue is what you're going to do about it. And that's what we're trying to do.
It is important what you call it, isn't it? I mean,
sure it is.
By that token, you would support the ICC's arrest warrant for Omar al-Bashir. That can't help negotiations.
We've always said that President Bashir needs to be responsive to the request from the ICC. But that said, the government of Khartoum also has to be involved in changing the conditions on the ground for individuals who now live in those camps. We're talking about increased security. We're talking about increased human rights. We're talking about a stability that allows people to go back to their lands if that's what they choose to do. We're talking about more representation and development. These are issues that have to be fixed by a responsible government, and this is what we're expecting the government of Sudan to do.
You seem to be an optimistic man. Now, advocates from lobby groups back in the United States, which many of them fall under that Save Darfur coalition, some have accused you of going soft on Sudan. One lobbyist was quoted as saying, every time Gration speaks, he seems to churn up a whole damage control exercise. How would you respond to that?
I would respond to that in that Obviously, you have to be optimistic. Obviously, you have to see things as they are on the ground for real. I have made 14 trips to this region in the last 11 months. I've looked, I've learned, I've listened, and I've tried to react in a very honest way to what I see on the ground. I think that so many things have been changed in the last 10 months. We've seen agreements on the referendum, the South and ABA. We've seen a rapprochement in Chad and Sudan. We've seen good things happen with the ceasefire framework. We've seen good things happen in ABA. We saw for the first time in this year, out of the 20 million eligible voters, 4/5, 80% have registered to vote. We've seen a transformation in the political side that, as you point out, 24 years we haven't had an election like this. So yes, there are challenges, and yes, there's things that we still need to do, but we've been able to avert a humanitarian crisis last year when the NGOs were expelled. A lot of good things are happening, and sure there's challenges, and sure there's things we have to overcome, but let's not forget the good things. Let's not understand the challenges that we have to do, and let's all work together to make sure we change the lives for the next generation of Darfuris and of Southern Sudanese and all the people of Sudan.
If you'll allow me, I want to go back again to terminology.
Okay.
To the root causes of Darfur. Professor Mahmoud Mamdani, who writes extensively about Darfur, listed 3 issues as the root causes. He said one was the unequal land system bequeathed to Darfur by the British colonial power, historically. Secondly was the 40-year drought and desertification, which led to conflict between nomads and peasants. The third is the spillover from the civil war in Chad in the 80s, which militarized Darfur. Now, why I'm interested in this is because he has no mention of genocidal Arabs hell-bent on killing black Africans, as it's often been characterized. Do you agree with Professor Mamdani? Is he right?
I've had an opportunity to meet the professor, and we've talked, and we've discussed these issues. And if you really look hard at the situation, it was a battle over resources. And now, and then bad things did happen as the fighting started, as the Sudanese government got involved using the Janjaweed and other militias, and things did get out of control. And consequently, bad things happen, mass atrocities and gross violation of human rights. And these things have to be stopped, not just now, but it has to have a definitive stop. We have to put into place the mechanisms, the processes, and the development so that we never go back to this issue. And we have to solve those resource issues that Mahmoud Mamdani talked about. Because if we don't solve the resources, and if we don't consider the fact of the desertification and the struggles just to earn a living, you know, when those 3 million people go back onto the economy, if we do secure peace and stability and human rights, there's still going to have to be opportunities to generate wealth, to create jobs, and we're going to have to do this in that situation that Mahmoud basically talked about. So I think that there are some serious challenges on the research side, and we're going to have to look at this as people that live in Darfur, as the regional partners, and as the international community to work together to put together a fix so we don't go back to battle over resources. This is a huge challenge, and I agree with him, and I think he identified the right things, and we have to make sure that we can fix those with a sustainable development program that allows people to earn a living on the land.
Well, we hope there is peace with justice and an end to the humanitarian crisis there. Scott Gration, thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Jim.